Alright, so we've finished the dry preparation for our wet felting, and now we're on to the kind of fun and slightly messy part, which is the wet felting. So I've got my curlicues to right here, and what they are is basically Corndale wool. Now you could also use merino. Corset grades don't work so well for this. They tend to come out really, really hairy, but if that's the effect you're going for, then that'll work for you. This is the fiber that I'm using. I just keep my fiber in a plastic bag. It comes in a little ball like this. The reason I keep it packaged this way is just to keep, dust and other fibers from kind of clumping up on it. Now, what's inside these, if you missed part 1, is a metallic chenille stem, or what when I was a kid we used to call a pipe cleaner. So these are inside these little curlicues, and they're what eventually is going to give this some structure. Now, what else do I have on my table right now? I have a ridged mat. This is going to be really, really important. This is actually a piece of shelf lining plastic. And over here I have the single most important thing you need for wet felting, which is really, really, really hot soapy water. This is so hot I can almost not stand to keep my hands in it for very long. I heated it with a kettle, and you can notice this piece of white down here in the bottom. This is a piece of soap. Yep, you heard it. Not dish soap, not liquid soap. Please don't use dishwashing soap for your felting. It can do all sorts of funky things to your fibers. I know it smells great, but not so awesome for felting. This is actually a little piece of soap from one of those bars you get when you go to the hotel or the motel. So now you know what to do with those, because I'm sure we all have like half a dozen of those sitting in a drawer somewhere. So I'm going to show you what we do. So I'm going to put a couple of these aside, and I'm going to work with the red one. One other thing I have here is a wad of plastic, and you'll see where this will come into play in a little bit. Okay, it can be really, really useful. I'm going to move this over to the other side of my table, over by the water, because that's where I'm going to want it. Okay, so what I'm going to do with my little bundle here is, now for a lot of kinds of felting, you don't dip your felt directly in the water, but for this one I'm going to do that. And I really want to get it good and saturated. Right there. Now it's really wet. And I'm going to just kind of roll it back and forth. And I'm going to mount my camera up because this is going to take some time. Alright, so I'm going to roll this back and forth on the mat. And what's happening right now is these fibers are starting to tangle up. And I'm not really putting very much pressure on this at all. I'm just allowing the little ridges in the mat to agitate the fibers. And they kind of form a skin on the fibers. And in just a few moments after doing this for just a little bit, I'll start to apply a little bit more pressure, because I'm going to want the fibers in the interior of this bundle to really tangle with and adhere to that chenille stem. I'm not going to want that chenille stem to slip out. And at this point, I'm going to use both hands. I'm going to roll up my sleeves, because this is, like I said, it can be a little bit wet, a little bit messy. You can see at the end there, that chenille stem kind of poking out a little bit. I don't want that. So when I see that happening, I'm going to kind of pull the wool toward that end. Now, as I'm working, I can feel my water getting cooler. I'm just going to dip it in my hot water again. That's what you just didn't see me do, because my hands left the frame. And now I'm really starting to apply some pressure all along the length of the curlicue, and you can see the end of it's really starting to kind of come out here. Once again, I'm just going to push that in as best as I can. Maybe that I may need to trim that off at the end, and that's okay. The other thing is, that I can do is I can use that structurally to anchor it to the final piece. And I'm rolling, rolling, rolling. If this were a larger piece, I'd have to do this for a much longer period of time. But since this is so tiny and there was so little fiber involved, it's not going to take me very long to get this really nicely felted. You can hear it rubbing, rubbing, rubbing against the ridges, and that's what does about probably 50% of the work here, are those little ridges. Now, a lot of people felt on industrial bubble wrap, which I do as well, but not for this particular type of structure that I'm making. It's really starting to look good. It's starting to feel tight. It's got a nice skin on it. Like I said, it doesn't take long to really felt up, but I want to dip it in the water one more time and give it a little more agitation. And now I'm really, really pressing hard with my hands because I'm really wanting to bond those fibers. I want it to become one solid mass. I don't want them to come apart at all. And as this works onto this piece of chenille stem, it actually does shrink up quite a bit. So you do lose some of the length. And of course some of the width. There we go. Now I'm going to take this, and what I have underneath is a towel, and I'm just going to take a little piece of the toweling, and I'm going to pat it dry. Now I know my piece of felt is red and my towel is red, so I'm going to move it over here so you can see just a little bit better what we've got going on. Okay. So here's our little piece of chenille stem wrapped in felt. Okay, you can see the little silver poking out at the top. And now I said I was going to be making curlicues, and obviously this is not a curlicue yet. So what do we have to do? Well, that's the third part of our process.
We work late and I pretend that I don't notice when you're next to me, but I do. I might be mistaken, but I sometimes get the